So I want to begin today's message with just a simple, honest question. When was the last time you really rested without feeling guilty about it? And I don't just mean like you chose like a lazy day, you just checked out, or you're like, yeah, I rested. I scrolled on my phone for 2 hours before I went to sleep last night when I really should have just been sleeping. No, I mean like actually rested the way God meant it, right? Because for many of us, the moment we stop, we immediately start feeling behind. We start to panic. The moment we sit still, our minds just begin to race. We worry, we get anxious. So we stay busy because we don't want to get caught up worrying and being anxious. The moment you slow down, you start to feel like this is wrong because we're not used to it. But here's the real issue, is that we don't know how to rest because we've started worshiping the wrong God. Not a statue, not a false religion, a far more socially acceptable idol, productivity. Hustle, output, the pressure to do more, be more, and produce more. Right? We've become a culture that obeys the voice of busyness way more quickly than the voice of God. But Jesus said something radically different. In Matthew 6:33, he said, "Seek the kingdom of God above all else and live righteously, and he will give you everything you need." Right? We're in our series, God's Kingdom First. Right, we kicked this off last week. We talked about how idols still find a way to sneak into that first place in our lives. And they're directing our lives more than God does, steering us towards building our own kingdom instead of building his kingdom. And when that happens, we stop loving God the way we were commanded. Because somewhere our love, our identity, our thinking, and our effort turn away from him. These things are better known as our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And when that happens, our lives become empty. Because all that we need, all the things we're searching for, and all four of those categories can only fully be found and satisfied in keeping God first. And you cannot seek God's kingdom first if you are constantly drained, distracted, overworked, or spiritually empty. And so God gave us a weekly practice to break this idol of hustle and of work, and this tool is called Sabbath. It's also what I like to call the forgotten command. Right. First thing I want you guys to know today is busyness isn't just a schedule problem, it's a spiritual problem. In the early 2000s, Dr. Richard Swenson described our culture as living with no margin. And he's trying, like, this is the biggest problem in our world is that we live with no margin. And this is 26 years ago. He said, marginless is being 30 minutes late to the doctor's office because you were 20 minutes late getting out of the bank, because you were 10 minutes late dropping the kids off at school, because the car ran out of gas 2 blocks from the gas station and you forgot your wallet. Does that ever happen? You're like, how do you know what I was doing on Saturday? You're taking your kids to school on Saturday. That also explains business. Margin, on the other hand, living with margin is having breath left at the top of the staircase, money left at the end of the month, and sanity left at the end of adolescence. Think about this. If marginless living, the physical, mental, emotional, and financial toll that comes with it, was a big problem 20 years ago, in the mid-90s when he was doing this study, it's got to be much worse today. Email, internet, they were barely at their beginnings at that time. Social media was maybe a thought of somebody. Because what do we do when we have space in our lives? We pull out our phone. We fill that margin up even more. The numbers in America prove it, right? Americans check their phones 144 times a day, right? And that's just your waking hours. That's like every 6 minutes you're pulling out your phone looking at something. 94% of people report experiencing significant stress because there isn't space in their lives. Burnout is officially a public health crisis. Do you know that? A public health crisis because of the World Health Organization. They're like, burnout, this is not okay. 48% of people lie awake at night due to stress. They can't sleep. And it says on weekdays, it's even higher. Man, we fill all of the time of our day, every moment. We fill the silence, we include more noise. How many of you guys are like, man, I just need to sit down and relax, so I gotta turn on the TV. Or I'm gonna work on something, so I'm gonna turn on the TV or turn on some music or play something in the background. Because we feel like, wow, this is gonna make me twice as productive. We speed up when our souls need to slow down. Because here's a deeper spiritual truth. If your schedule has no room for God, then God is not first in your life. Your schedule is. Productivity becomes an idol when you feel guilty resting, when you fear falling behind, when you believe everything depends on you, or if you just don't know how to stop. Guys, busyness is not a badge of honor. It's a warning sign, right? Man, I find in myself when people are like, man, how are things been? I'm like, busy? And I'm like, oh, I hate that I say that. Like, I don't want it to be that way. I'm trying really hard to pull back because I used to be like, no, I'm busy because I'm working hard. I'm doing all these things. I got that hustle down. I'm making that bread, doing all the things. But now I don't want that because I realize that's a sign of something that's unhealthy in my life. Do you know in Japan they have a term now for death by overwork because it was happening so much? They had to name it. And it's so common now that there's also government legislation around it. Like companies can only have so many people die from overwork now. We've baptized busyness and we call it responsibility. We've confused exhaustion with faithfulness. Jesus never asked us to build our kingdom through constant production. He asked us to build his kingdom using his tools. And this is where Sabbath comes in. Right, and also on your survey, this is one of the practices you guys asked for more information about, so you better be taking notes, okay? Second point, put this in your notes. Sabbath is God's antidote to self-reliance. All right, so we're going to jump back to Exodus 20 today, the 10 Commandments. We talked a little bit about this last week, about how the 10 Commandments were really God kind of expounding earlier on what Jesus later said about seeking the kingdom first, because the first 4 commands are about keeping God first in our lives. The following 6 commands are about living righteously. And then God said, if you can do those things, I'll take care of the rest. So Exodus 20, 8 through 11, it talks about the Sabbath, the 4th command of the 10 Commandments. Remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. You have 6 days each week for ordinary work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath day of rest dedicated to the Lord your God. On that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, your livestock, and any foreigners living among you. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and everything in them. But on the 7th day he rested. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart as holy. This command out of all 10 commandments has the most commentary, right? And I think because God knew we would try and rationalize it away. So he's like, no work means no work for anybody. And let me list all the people so you can't decide that it doesn't include you. And what I also love is that it's this point back to the very, very beginning. That God put this in place, not now in the 10 Commandments, but he modeled it for us from the very beginning. So why do we forget this command? Some of you might venture to say, well, I haven't forgot it. I come to church, therefore it's my holy day. But I venture to say that you don't actually keep it as a day of rest. Holy there doesn't mean make it religious. The word holy means set it apart, make it different for God. Right? So if you're working 6 days, the difference on the 7th is to not work and to rest. Now, why did God give us this command? And I believe it's because Sabbath is a weekly declaration for us to remember who our provider really is, who we really rely on. Sabbath is how God breaks our addiction to trying to control things, our dependence on ourselves, and our worship of the work and production that we do. Right? And this isn't just an Old Testament thing. It wasn't just like said there and not brought back up. Jesus had all sorts of encounters on the Sabbath. Most of them, they thought he was working because he was healing people. And they're like, oh, hey, praying for somebody, that's work. Don't do that. It was a very confusing time. He responded in a lot of sarcastic ways of like, if your animal fell in a well today, if you lost your donkey down there, you would try and save your donkey. And, maybe he wasn't just talking about donkeys, but the other word, right? But one time, something happened on the Sabbath, and he said something really profound, and that's what I want to look at in Mark chapter 2, 23 through 28. It says, one Sabbath day, as Jesus was walking through some grain fields, his disciples began breaking off heads of grain to eat. But the Pharisees said to Jesus, look, why are you breaking the law by harvesting grain on the Sabbath? Jesus said to them, haven't you ever read in the scriptures what David did when his companions were hungry? He went into the house of God during the days when Abiathar was high priest, and broke the law by eating the sacred loaves of bread that only the priests are allowed to eat. And he also gave some to his companions. Verse 27. Then Jesus said to them, the Sabbath was made to meet the needs of people, and not people to meet the requirements of the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even over the Sabbath. What Jesus doesn't say is that the Sabbath doesn't need to be followed, or that under the new covenant it doesn't matter. He reminds them the Sabbath was never about legalism. The Sabbath was made for man as a blessing. The Sabbath was made for you. When we're like, man, what are my needs to be taken care of? Jesus literally says the Sabbath was made to meet the needs of people. It's not a rule. It is a freedom. To rest is a blessing from God. Rest given to us to meet those needs that we have. Needs we often ignore. Remember how we talked last week that we often start at our needs? Instead of seeking God's kingdom first, we do it backwards. We start at our needs, then we try and live right, and then we squeeze God in. When we need to put God first, then live the way he's asked us to, and then he takes care of our needs. How many of your real needs are based around just trying to find space in your life for real rest? Seek the kingdom first by Sabbathing, and your needs will be taken care of. And Sabbath is really one of the greatest ways that we can live the greatest commandment. When Jesus was asked which commandment mattered most, he replied in Mark 12:30, and you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and all your strength. Sabbath is one of the primary ways we can do that. Because when we stop working and we stop striving and we stop performing, we give God access to every part of us. All right, so let's look at that broken down a little bit. Sabbath helps us love God with all of our heart. Your heart is where your affections, your emotions, your desires live. And when you Sabbath, you literally give yourself a day to say, I'm going to enjoy time with God. Whatever that looks like, with the things that God has created you to do and to find enjoyment in, you get to do that with God, right? It's like a weekly date with God. It's going to keep your heart more in love with him. But when we don't Sabbath, our heart gets attached to our productivity. It starts to say, this is where I find love. This is where I find value. You crave achievement more than presence. You start to love applause more than the intimacy with God. You feel anxious when you aren't doing. But Sabbath slows our heart down long enough for God to reorder those loves in our life. Your heart begins to say, God, you are my first love. And you make space to love him first without competition. He's not fighting for that space in your life. Sabbath helps us love God with all of our soul. Our soul is that deepest part of you. It's really like where we find identity. Sabbath gives us space to remind ourselves where our identity is found. Without Sabbath, our soul dries up. It gets, you start putting your identity in all the things you do, and we can't keep up with that. So it suffocates out that spiritual sensitivity inside of us. It drowns out God's voice because we often don't leave space. And you start to identify with that hustle. But Sabbath gives room for your soul to breathe. It's like CPR to your identity, where God can give space to breathe that life back into you. But we rarely find it if we don't make space. Sabbath helps us love God with all of our mind. Our minds are constantly bombarded, right? Did you know that most of your phones now have like a screen time thing on there, and you can look at how much time you spend on your screen, but you can also look at how many notifications you get a day. And you can look at how many times you pick up your phone every day and exactly what you go to each time you open it up. It's very interesting because you are constantly bombarded. Right? Every single app that you download on your phone goes, can I send you notifications? They're going to help you. No, it's not there to help you. It is there to help them make money. Right? They need you to open that app. You can turn them off. Did you know that? You don't need the notifications. You can go through and turn them all off. And then you won't be on there so much, but you're constantly bombarded. Not even by that. You have responsibilities in life. If you watch the news or if you're getting on social media, you're being bombarded with news. I don't think we were created to receive the amount of information that we receive in a day about everything going on in the world. Right? And as much as it's nice and it's important to understand what's happening so that we can stand up for justice and for what is right, we can't take that much stuff in all the time. And we get bombarded by it. It weighs down on our souls. It weighs down on our mind. We have constant noise in our life. People think I'm crazy because they get in my car and music is not playing. And because I've realized, man, that's a space I can have in my life where I don't have more noise. Again, how many of you guys I got to work on something, so I need to turn on more noise? And there's just a lot of pressure in our world today because of all the new connections that we have and the ways that we're putting ourselves out there in the world. And all of that bombards our mind. And when we Sabbath and we separate ourselves from those things, we finally can free up some things. But without Sabbath, your thoughts become scattered. You focus fractures. How many of you guys just feel like, man, I can't focus on things anymore? And then our beliefs, they're changed by the way we think. And when we're bombarded by how the world thinks, then that shapes our beliefs. But when we Sabbath, it creates space for things like Romans 12:2 that says, let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Your mind cannot be renewed when it's constantly overwhelmed. You have to make space, and Sabbath does that. Sabbath also helps us love God with all of our strength. Right? This is literally the effort we put into this stuff, our physical energy, body, our capacity. And without Sabbath, we wear down. We break down. Energy drains faster than it can refill. Your obedience then gets weaker because you're exhausted. Sabbath strengthens our physical ability to obey God. God never asked you to run on empty. Right? He has asked you to be obedient, and part of being obedient is choosing to rest so that you can be filled, so you can run your race well. Guys, Sabbath is not optional. It's essential for your spiritual formation. It trains us to love God with everything we are, and it gives us the capacity to actually do that. Now, I think we want to do it. We just don't have space. And that's because his kingdom is not first. Right? When all of our stuff comes first, there's no space. When his kingdom comes first, there has to be space because we're putting his stuff first. So the third thing today is God provides supernaturally for those who trust him with rest. I think one of the clearest biblical examples is the manna story in the Old Testament. In the book of Exodus, God's people are kind of living in the desert. They've just escaped Egypt, the 10 plagues and all those things. They're being led by Moses and God through a pillar of cloud during the day and fire by night. And God is providing for them in their food as well, because again, they're in the middle of the desert. Exodus 16:4-5, it says, then the Lord said to Moses, look, I'm going to rain down food from heaven for you. Each day the people can go out and pick up as much food as they need for that day. I will test them in this to see whether or not they will follow my instructions. On the sixth day, they will gather food, and when they prepare it, there will be twice as much as usual. It's interesting to note that on the sixth day, it'll be twice as much, so it provides for the Sabbath. But it's not that they collect twice as much. It says they collect the same amount, but when they prepare it, because they would take it and they would have to grind it up to make bread and stuff out of it. But when they prepare it, it would double. Because Sabbath is about trust and faith. The problem is the people didn't actually really understand that. Exodus 16, verse 27 says some of the people went out anyways on the seventh day, but they found no food. The Lord asked Moses, how long will these people refuse to obey my commands and instructions? They must realize that the Sabbath is the Lord's gift to you. That is why he gives you a 2-day supply on the sixth day, so there will be enough for 2 days. On the seventh day, you must each stay in your place and do not go out to pick up food on the seventh day. How often is that us? Where instead of trusting God to provide that what he's given us now will be enough to stand through our day of rest, that we go, no, I should probably go pick up that extra job. I should go work those extra hours. I should just show up for another day. And then it doesn't provide. We're just like those people who go out. We're like, man, this money is not lasting as long as it should be. I've been working harder, and I still am finding ways that it's falling short. It's because you're ignoring the gift God's given you. And this is something God is still offering today. Right? Consider Chick-fil-A. Right, it's going to make you hungry, but we're fasting. It's closed today. It's a really bummer, sorry. But they're closed every Sunday. Right, 52 days of business a year that they're missing out on, 1/7. This is kind of easy math. And yet, they still rank the highest in customer satisfaction, highest revenue per store in our nation, and outperforms pretty much all of their 7-day competitors. Many of them open 24 hours. And they're not open 24 hours, closed on day, and they still outperform. There's a Chick-fil-A in one of the stadiums in New York. And so, it's closed on Sundays, because that's what they believe. And yet they still are one of the highest performing restaurants inside there, even though Sunday is one of the biggest days of things. They miss out on all the Sunday football games, yet still outperforms the other stores in there because they honor what God said. There's a really great story of a company called Correct Craft during World War II. And during World War II, this Christian-owned boat company was asked to build 300 storm boats to race across to this place so that they can invade into another country. And they were asked to build 300 storm boats in 18 days. And this is way more than they had ever produced. On average, they produced 1.5 boats a day. So that adds up to not 300, okay? When the government asked them to, you're going to have to work around the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to be able to reach this goal, the owner said, we're going to do this God's way or we're not going to do it at all. They rested Sundays. They gave everybody the day off for 24 hours. They even paused on Wednesday evenings for Wednesday night chapel. And God gave one of their engineers a dream, partway through, that allowed them to increase their production dramatically. He literally woke up with, wow, I had this idea, let's try it out, and tried it out, and it was able to, I think it was tenfold, how much boats they could produce. And get this. It increased it so much so that they actually finished those 300 boats early. Now, the government needed more than 300 boats, so they also hired another company. That company said, hey, we'll do it. We'll work 24/7. Their boats didn't even match the specs they were supposed to, and they couldn't use any of them. And guess who picked up the slack? Correct Craft. They built 100 more boats in that same allotted days where they were like, well, we can maybe do 25. They ended up building 400 boats. Do you understand that God can do more with your 6 rested days than you can do with 7 exhausted ones? Right? And that's a truth that he wants you to understand. And what I think is the best part about Sabbath is this 4th point, that God wants to enjoy his gifts with him. He wants you to enjoy those gifts with him. Isaiah 58 gives us a heart posture behind Sabbath. In Isaiah 58, 13 through 14, it says, keep the Sabbath day holy. Don't pursue your own interests on that day, but enjoy the Sabbath. Speak of it with delight as the Lord's holy day. Honor the Sabbath in everything you do on that day, and don't follow your own desires or talk idly. Then the Lord will be your delight. I will give you great honor and satisfy you with the inheritance I promised your ancestor Jacob. I, the Lord, has spoken. The Sabbath is about delight. If you remember, we talked about this word delight, that God says if you delight yourself in the Lord, he'll give you the desires of your heart. And that word delight is not about being happy, it's about being satisfied. And that's what Sabbath is about. It's about finding the day of satisfaction in God. When God said through Isaiah, don't pursue your own interests, it's not about pursuing things that you enjoy. It's about don't pursue the things that you think will satisfy you. Pursue God instead. Man, pursue the joy that he has to offer. Pursue his presence, that he is there with you that day. Pursue gratitude and the satisfaction of being with him and him alone. All right, picture this. You've planned and paid for a nice vacation for you and your family. Your children are coming along. They're provided for. Vacation is paid for. You budgeted to cover all of your bills and food and all the things while you're gone, like any good parent would. You've already paid all the bills for the month. You know you have enough money to cover any future bills, whether your vacation's paid for or you saved up to cover it. And so you're about ready to leave on vacation. And your 9-year-old comes up to you and says, I can't go. And you're like, why can't you go on this vacation? And they say, I got to stay home. Somebody's got to pay for this house. Right? First off, you're like, you're 9 years old. What the heck are you talking about, kid? And no matter how much you tell them, it's not your concern to pay for the bills. I'm the parent. I've already taken care of all these things. And you reassure them it's all provided for. They're like, no, I'm not coming on that vacation, and I'm building a lemonade stand. And you're like, that's not going to provide enough to pay for this home anyways. That's ridiculous, right? But we do that week after week, year after year to God. You know that God put Sabbath in your life so you can take a day off each week to enjoy the life he's given you. The friends, the family, the things that he's gifted you with, he wants to enjoy that day with you. He's there like, let's hang out. And you go up to him and you say, sorry, God, I got to work to pay for this stuff. Somebody's got it. If you're relaxing, who's going to be doing it? I can't hang out with you. That's ridiculous. But this is what we do to God when we refuse the rest he's offering. God says, spend this day with me. Enjoy what I've given you. And we say, I can't. I need to be in control. When it's pointless. You think you could provide better than God can? Right? And sometimes we say we Sabbath, but we work on it anyways. It's like going on vacation with God. He's sipping a margarita in the pool, asks you to join him, and you're like, yeah, I'll come, and you bring your laptop out. You're like, I'm just going to work a little. God's like, all right, bad choice. Now, there are some real enemies of the Sabbath that we need to be aware of, and that is fear and pride. Fear says, if I stop, everything will fall apart. And so I can't do it. I can't take that day off. Everything will fall apart in my life. Right? I need that money that I make that day. I need that to get that thing done. Otherwise, everything's not going to happen. And pride says, if I stop, no one else can carry this. It all depends on me, which is very not realistic. This world is much bigger than you. But Sabbath confronts both by reminding us God is God and we are not. Understand that we are humans, and that means we have limitations. Trying to ignore our limitations, I think, is an idol in and of itself. Pride and trying to get past our limitations, which is probably still pride, is really the original sin of the garden. Because they desire to be like God and say, I want to have everything that he has. And when we don't embrace our limitations, we're just not living the way that God has called us to live. God doesn't have limitations. Yet at the very beginning, he still modeled rest for us because he knew it would be important for us. When we Sabbath, we literally say, man, I understand my limit and I need to rest so that I can complete the work that he's called me through. All right, so how do we actually practice Sabbath? I hope you're convinced that God said to do it and that it's good for you and it's a gift he has for you. But how do we actually put it into our lives? Well, in Jewish culture, there are tons of rules to Sabbathing to make sure that you don't work. They have decided what is work and what's not work. They cannot turn their oven on because that would be work, pushing the knob, turning on, whatever. They can't start a shower. They can't even push an elevator button because that is work. Right? In some of the highly Jewish communities in their apartment buildings, they literally have an elevator that for the 24 hours of Sabbath runs by itself and stops at every floor so that they can still use the elevator but not work. Right? Now, that may seem like much, but listen to this from the author Judith Shulevitz. She says, most people mistakenly believe that all you have to do to stop working is to not work. The inventors of the Sabbath understood that it was much more complicated undertaking. You cannot downshift casually and easily the way you might slip into bed at the end of a long day. As the Cat in the Hat says, it is fun to have fun, but you have to know how. That is why the Puritan and Jewish Sabbaths were so exactingly intentional, requiring extensive advanced preparation, at the very least a scrubbed house, a full pantry, and a bath. The rules did not exist to torture the faithful. They were meant to communicate the insight that interrupting the ceaseless round of striving requires a surprisingly strenuous act of will, one that has to be bolstered by habit as well as social consent. All right, so here are some rules or some guidelines to Sabbathing. They're not going to be as crazy as that. We don't have time to get down into, whether wiping your butt is work or not. I really don't know the rule for that, so somebody Google it, let me know later. But, all right. But I also want, this is to help you practice Sabbath, right? And it's a practice, because you're not going to get it perfect. And if you try and enter into it with the idea of, I will make it perfect immediately, then you will fail and you'll be disappointed. Practice it means you're going to keep trying, and it'll slowly get better the more you practice it, okay? So the first thing that you have to do is you have to schedule a weekly Sabbath. If it is not on your calendar, it won't happen, right? If you're going to go, well, when there's space, I will Sabbath, then you've got it all backwards. You're doing the verse backwards again. You're taking care of your needs, you're trying to live, and then making space for the kingdom. If you want a Sabbath, make space for the kingdom first. The goal of that is 24 hours. And this includes sleeping. In biblical idealism, a day actually starts when the sun sets and goes to the next sunset. So 24 hours, according to the Bible, is like the evening through the night, and then 3/4 the next day. And so at our house, we practice Sabbath usually from Friday dinner until the start of Saturday dinner. And that's kind of our Sabbath. It also gives space because there are things that come up every day that have to be taken care of. And so that gives you the space to do that and still honor God with your 24 hours. And you can sleep for a good chunk of them, which is really nice. Okay, so schedule it. Find that time. Start somewhere. If you're like, I really literally cannot carve out 24 hours right now, but I'm going to work towards it, don't go, I'll wait till I have that space. Start. Say, Friday from when I get home from work until Saturday when I have to go to work, I'm Sabbathing, or whatever that looks like. Or maybe you can do 2 evenings. Just start somewhere so that you start prioritizing it. So then when you have the ability to make that decision to create Sabbath, a full 24 hours, you'll do it. Okay? The second thing is you have to stop working. Okay? You cannot Sabbath and keep working. Those are two opposing things. I know, crazy. You're like, what? How? You have to stop completely. No just checking something. No catching up on stuff. This isn't the day to do your chores or to get that to-do list finally done. That's not what the Sabbath is for. It is a space to do hobbies you enjoy. Those things that God's created you with that are interests that you want to get out and do on that day is fine, right? If you enjoy yard work or creating things and fixing things, maybe it fits into that day. But if it feels more like I have to get this done today, don't do it, right? Because now it's not just a fun thing, right? Your priority of that day is resting and being with God, right? And don't even research work. I don't read books about work or those type of things. This is really hard for me. I have a lot of books to read, and most of them involve something to do with church-type stuff. And so I have to find books to read on those days or other things that don't remind me of work. The third thing is be with God, right? And now you're like, well, why is it be with God first? Well, you didn't make space for him yet, okay? So you got to schedule it. You got to stop working. Now you can actually be with him, okay? All right, so pray, worship, read scripture, sit in silence. However you connect best with God is what you need to do. Maybe it is going on a hike in nature. Maybe it's through family-like traditions and rituals of worship in a certain way. Maybe it's through celebrating and having friends over and just having a dinner and enjoying that time together with them. Maybe it's sitting in silence when you finally have that space on your porch and just resting with God and being able to think through life with him. Gary Thomas, he's an author. He has a book called Sacred Pathways. It talks about the 9 different ways that we connect with God. It's a really good book. It's a really easy read. I would highly encourage you to check it out because it's going to help you to understand this is how I connect best with God, and then you could kind of curate your Sabbath around that. Fourth, do what restores you. Right? We have these tanks in our lives. We have spiritual, emotional, physical, and mental tanks. They have different capacities. Everybody has different limitations to them, and you need to find a way for them to be refreshed. Heart, soul, mind, and strength. How are you going to love God if those are empty? Right? And so obviously we go to God first, but we also go to those things that we enjoy, that fill those things inside of us. Man, I love it when my kids are just enjoying the life that I have created for them, especially when they're not fighting. It's very rare, but, right? But it's like, man, I worked hard for this because I care about them and I love them and I want them to just enjoy that thing. Whether it's their stupid toys I don't understand or their weird videos on YouTube, whatever it is, it's just like, man, I'm glad they're enjoying it. Now, I really enjoy when they want to enjoy the things I like and we do those together, but that's not always it. But I wholeheartedly believe God is the same with us. He created us. He knows all of those interests and those things. And when we create that space in our lives to enjoy those things and invite them, like God, to just be there with us in it, I think he's happy about that. Now, it's different for each of us, right? And so when we Sabbath as a family, we have to create all that different space for us. For me, like relaxing means going on a new adventure. For Victoria, it means sitting on the couch. But God will do both those things with us. Sometimes we do it together. Sometimes we do it separate. Our kids are all different too, and so we create space for it. But we're also willing to participate in those things with each other as well. The fifth thing is probably the hardest thing. Let something remain unfinished. Because this is where trust grows. This is where the idol of productivity dies. When you say, I'm going to take this Sabbath even though I know there's something on my to-do list that I didn't finish. This is embracing your limit. This is reminding you that you are not God and that he's in control and that he's going to take care of things and he will provide and he will do what he does. Because if you keep waiting to Sabbath until you've completed everything on your to-do list, you will never Sabbath. You have to let things go and you have to trust God. Sixth thing I encourage in our world today is turn off screens for that time. Take a break from what's going on everywhere else, right? Completely just disconnect for that time. We need that break from around us. It's literally proven that if you take those breaks, it's going to increase your ability to focus. It's going to lessen your anxiety. It's going to create more space and margin in your life. In all aspects, disconnecting from screens is better for you. There's not like a single study that's like, this is good. So just do it, okay? Rest is still God's invitation today. Hebrews 4, 9 through 11, it says, so there is a special rest waiting for the people of God. For all who have entered into God's rest have rested from their labors, just as God did after creating the world. So let us do our best to enter that rest. But if we disobey God as the people of Israel did, we will fall. If God commands rest, if he invites us to rest, if he modeled rest, if he says he blesses rest, why do we resist it so much? Sabbath is not a burden. Sabbath is a blessing. It's a gift. It's a weapon. It's a kingdom practice. It's a declaration of trust and a rhythm of renewal for your life. Do you know what the first thing man did after he was created? The very first thing. Right? Because on the sixth day, man was created. And what happened on the seventh day? God rested. So what did man do? He rested. God didn't even give him instructions yet. He said, you're resting with me. Then you can work. Right? Do you realize that that's actually the rhythm we're supposed to have? You're not supposed to work and deserve rest. You actually rest to deserve to work. Right? We got it all wrong in our society. Start with the rest, and then you can work. In the book 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman, he says, while capitalism gets its energy from the permanent anxiety of striving for more, the Sabbath embodies the thought that whatever work you've completed by the time that Friday or Saturday night rolls around might be enough, that there might be no sense for now in trying to get any more done. In his book, Sabbath as Resistance, the Christian theologian Walter Brueggemann describes the Sabbath as an invitation to spend one day per week in the awareness and practice of the claim that we are situated on the receiving end of the gifts of God. One need not to be a religious believer to feel some sort of deep relief in that idea of being on the receiving end, in the possibility that today, at least, there might be nothing more you need to do in order to justify your existence. Sabbath is how we love God with our heart, soul, mind, and strength because it reminds us that our existence does not depend on us at all. It's not about what you do that God wants to be around you for. It's because he created you. And the very first thing that he did with man when he created him was just invite him into his presence and rest with him. That's your purpose. It's to rest with him. And then from out of that, we follow in obedience to whatever else he has called us to. Sabbath is a tool to help us keep his kingdom first, and we must use it. Right? And this isn't something, again, I'm never up here going, this is what you should do. I don't do it, but you guys should do it. Right? Like I already mentioned, we try and Sabbath as a family, and I say we try. It's a practice still for us. We do a decent job more times than not, but we're still trying to figure it out and how it works for us. But we also do this as a church. If you're new here, every time there's a fifth Sunday in a month, we take that Sunday as our Sabbath Sunday. And we give all of our volunteers a break that day. We just meet here and we share. And we encourage each other and we talk about the things that we are thankful for from God. And we give that space to be a day set apart for resting and worshiping God. Because again, I'm not asking you to do something that we don't believe here. Right? So if you're tired, if you're overwhelmed this season, if you feel that your life has no margin, if you're spiritually dry, if your anxiety is ruling more than peace, Jesus is inviting you, as he did in Matthew 11:28, to come to him and he will give you rest. He doesn't give more pressure. He doesn't ask for more productivity. He says, come to me and rest. Stop striving, stop producing, and just be with God. All right, let's pray. God, we thank you for the rest that you've invited us into, God. God, I pray that we would understand that you commanded it from us, not because you just wanted us to do one more thing, but because you're asking us to stop doing, because it's not what we're called to do. We are called to be. We are human beings, not human doings. God, you've asked us to just come and be and rest with you, and out of that comes whatever you've called us to. God, I pray that you would help us to prioritize your kingdom first. God, that we would really take this to heart and to mind, and we would look at our calendars and would say, this will be the Sabbath. And I will practice it, and I will try and stop working in those times, and I will focus on you and enjoying my time with you, whatever that may look like. God, thank you for creating rest for us and inviting us into it, Lord. Thank you for that gift. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, before you guys leave, I want to talk about the fasting booklet, things that are on the chairs around you real quick, just so that you have an idea of why they're there. This is just a kind of a help to go alongside our church fast. The first few pages kind of talk about the purpose, how to fast, keys to fasting and things. And then there's some prayer points on page 7. There's 3 points really for our church that we are asking that you guys pray for these 21 days. We will all be praying for these same things together. And then on page 8, right behind it, is a spot for you to write your own personal prayer requests. Brandon brought up a really good point in our team rally about like the church fast, these 21 days being a really great point to seek God, a time to see what he wants to say to you, and also just pursue, like, man, what are some things that I desire from God? Our second Saturday leadership night was last night, and I was challenging the church that this year we want to raise our hope and our expectations. We understand that we serve a God of the impossible. He does impossible things every day, all the time. He can do exceedingly above anything that we can imagine. So put down some prayer requests that are on, like, only God can do this level, and start praying for it, for yourself, for your family, for our community, and believe those things to happen. And then the second half of the book is something we started last year called Practice Together, because life is not about living on your own. God created us for community. He knows it's not good for us to be alone. And we just do better in life when we have somebody who's walking alongside us and we can hold each other accountable. So the main point of this is to find somebody during this time, and I prefer somebody outside your household because I think we do better when we have accountability outside of it, that you can meet with once a week. And you can just talk about what is God sharing with you right now through this fast, and what are you going to do about it? And there's a spot to just kind of how to ask somebody, what to do when you meet together, and then a little like check off like box just so that you can make sure like, oh, this is what I'm doing each week. And so take this with you, use it, find somebody soon, because we're already into this fast, so get going. And we are asking people to meet for 6 weeks, which is longer than our fast, because I think that's going to develop better habits for us all. And so, again, this isn't something that we ask you to do, but we don't do. This is something that I do in my life regularly as well. So take those. I'm believing for big things from this fast, but big things from God this year, and hope that you will join me in that. And don't forget, Wednesday night, we have our first prayer and worship night during this fast at 6 p.m., so join us there too. Go and rest today.